Subscribe to this channel and like it, thank you. The bus rattled through the late evening traffic, its dim lights flickering over tired faces and echoing engines. Among the muted passengers, the young woman stepped inside, clutching her bag tight as she searched for an empty seat. She tried to ignore the group of 3 men at the back whose eyes locked onto her the moment she entered. Their smirks grew bolder as she hesitated. One of them shifted, patting the seat beside him in a way that made her stomach twist. She swallowed hard, choosing a seat near the middle, hoping distance would protect her. But she already sensed trouble wasn't done. As the bus lurched forward, the men began whispering loud enough for her to hear, comments about her clothes, her hair, and the way she held her bag. Each word felt like a needle. She looked out the window, pretending not to notice, but her trembling fingers betrayed her. The father sitting 2 rows ahead noticed her discomfort. He sat with his small daughter sleeping on his shoulder, her tiny hand curled around his hoodie. His protective instinct sharpened instantly. He watched the men shift seats, inching closer to the young woman, their whispers turning into mocking laughter. She pressed herself into the corner of her seat, heart pounding, silently begging for the next stop to arrive faster. One man leaned forward, tapping the back of her seat with a smirk, asking where she was going, whether she was alone, and why she wasn't smiling. She didn't answer, fearful that any reaction would escalate things. She hugged her bag tighter, shifting slightly, but their persistence only grew. The father gently adjusted his daughter, his eyes never leaving the scene. Something inside him stirred. He couldn't just sit and watch this unfold. He whispered to his daughter, gently waking her up and moving her beside him so he could stand. The little girl rubbed her eyes, confused but trusting. The father walked down the aisle slowly, careful not to provoke the men immediately. He stopped right beside the frightened woman and gave her a warm, reassuring smile. "Excuse me," he said softly, "would you like to sit with us? You're not alone." She blinked, surprised, her throat tightening with relief. The men paused, eyeing the father with annoyance, but he didn't acknowledge them. He simply offered his hand. The woman hesitated for a moment, glancing at the men who were still staring at her. Then she rose, clutching her bag, and stepped into the aisle. One of the men scoffed, muttering something crude, but the father placed himself between them, blocking their view. The bus grew quieter as several passengers watched silently. The father guided her toward his seat, making space beside his daughter. She sat down, still trembling slightly but already feeling safer. His daughter scooted closer, offering the woman a sleepy smile, which softened her shoulders. The father sat beside her and leaned slightly forward, speaking in a calm voice that only she could hear. "You're okay now," he said. "They won't bother you here." She nodded, unable to form words as the fear slowly melted. The men continued glaring, but the father's steady presence seemed to discourage further attempts. His jaw tightened subtly, telegraphing that he was ready if they tried anything. She exhaled a shaky breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle. For the first time since boarding, she felt seen, not as prey, but as a person worth protecting. The bus continued its bumpy journey, and the father's daughter leaned forward, resting her small head on the woman's arm. "Are you okay?" the child asked softly. The woman managed a smile. "I am now." The innocent question carried a warmth that pulled tears to her eyes. She subtly wiped them away. Before anyone noticed, the father watched the interaction with a gentle expression. "She's braver than me sometimes," he chuckled quietly. The woman let out a small laugh, the tension in her chest loosening as the bus rolled over another pothole. But the men weren't done. One of them stood, staggering slightly as if trying to intimidate. The father met his gaze calmly, unflinching. The entire bus stiffened. The conductor stepped forward, sensing the brewing conflict, but the father spoke first. "Sit down," he said firmly, but without raising his voice. There was something in his tone, grounded and unwavering, that silenced the man instantly. After a long moment, the man scoffed and slumped back into his seat. Passengers exchanged glances, admiring the father's quiet courage. The woman watched him with new admiration. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't violent, just steady, controlled protection. She whispered, "Thank you, I didn't know what to do." The father shook his head gently. "You shouldn't have to do anything. Their behavior is the problem, not yours." She took a deep breath, nodding slowly. His daughter reached over and held the woman's hand, offering silent comfort. The woman squeezed back gratefully, feeling warmth spread through her chest, pushing out the last bits of fear. Outside, the evening had grown darker, streetlights blurring through the windows like streaks of gold. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The men muttered amongst themselves but stayed seated. The woman felt herself slowly reclaiming space, her breath steadier, her shoulders less tense. The father's presence acted like a shield, not forceful, but grounded. He chatted softly with his daughter about what she wanted for dinner, giving the woman a sense of normalcy after the chaos she'd endured. The bus neared her stop, and she hesitated before standing. "This is me," she said quietly. The father nodded and stood with her, ensuring the men couldn't block her path. His daughter waved. "Bye," she chirped sweetly. The woman's eyes softened. "Bye, sweetheart." The father helped her move toward the exit, positioning himself as a barrier until the doors opened. The men watched but didn't dare follow. The woman stepped off the bus, the cool air hitting her face like a fresh start. She turned back toward the bus, her eyes meeting the father's through the open doors. "Thank you," she said again, this time with her voice full and steady. "You may have saved me from something terrible." He offered a small, reassuring smile. "Just take care of yourself. And remember, you're never alone in a world full of people who still care." The bus doors closed with a soft hiss, and she watched it drive away, deeply moved by the kindness of a stranger and the bravery of a single dad who chose to step in. As she walked down the street, she replayed the moment he said, "Sit with me, you're not alone." It echoed in her chest like a promise she wished she had heard sooner in life. The fear was gone, but the impact of the encounter lingered. Someone had stood up for her when she couldn't. She felt stronger, more secure, touched by the small girl's innocent empathy and her father's quiet strength. She knew she would remember this night forever. Back on the bus, the father settled into his seat again, pulling his daughter close. She looked up at him, eyes wide and curious. "Daddy, why were those men being mean?" He sighed softly. "Sometimes people choose to be unkind. And sometimes, we choose to protect others when they need help." She thought for a moment, then nodded before resting her head against him again. He kissed the top of her hair, grateful that she could learn kindness instead of fear. The bus rolled on into the night, carrying a father teaching courage by example and a little girl who had learned compassion through a simple touch of another's hand. Meanwhile, the woman walked home with newfound confidence, her steps lighter than before. She knew the world could be dark, but moments like this reminded her that light still existed. Sometimes in the form of a stranger offering a safe seat, a gentle voice, and unspoken solidarity. And tonight, that light had found her when she needed it most. Please tell me how you liked the story in the comments. Thank you.